When I first met my daughter-in-law, Chloe, I genuinely thought she'd bring sunshine into my son's life. She was young, stylish, and full of charm, the kind of woman who could light up a room just by walking in. My son Daniel adored her, and I remember thinking, finally, someone who makes him happy. But that feeling didn't last long. From the very first family dinner after their wedding, Chloe made me feel small. She'd glance at my simple dress, the wrinkles around my eyes, my old-fashioned hairstyle, and smile, but not the kind of smile that warms your heart. It was the kind that makes you question your own reflection. I brushed it off, telling myself I was being sensitive. But it didn't stop there. Every time we met, she had something to say about how I looked. "You should really try modern clothes, Mom." Or, "Maybe you could use a little color in your hair." I laughed it off, even when it stung, because I didn't want to cause trouble for Daniel. Then came the day she called me an ugly old hag. It happened at their housewarming party. Chloe had invited half the neighborhood, all young couples and her stylish friends. I wore my best floral dress, the same one I'd worn to Daniel's graduation, the one he said made me look beautiful back then. I'd spent the morning baking my famous carrot cake, the same recipe passed down from my mother. I wanted to bring something from my heart. But when I entered the kitchen with the cake, Chloe turned to her friends and laughed. "Oh my God, she actually brought that old thing again. My husband's mom, always stuck in the past. Honestly, she's like some ugly old hag from another century." Her friends giggled. My hands trembled so much that the cake almost slipped. Daniel wasn't even in the room. He was outside grilling, oblivious to the humiliation I just felt. I stood there, frozen, pretending to laugh along, but my throat burned. My chest ached. I excused myself, went into the bathroom, and just stared at my reflection in the mirror. Ugly old hag. The words echoed like a curse. For the first time in my life, I actually believed it. The wrinkles, the gray hairs, the soft lines around my mouth, everything I used to accept as signs of life and wisdom suddenly felt like proof that she was right. I went home early that night, quietly, without saying goodbye. But as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, something shifted inside me. It wasn't anger at first. It was sadness. Sadness that my son married someone who couldn't see beyond appearances. Sadness that I'd allowed people like her to define what beauty meant. But sadness has a strange way of turning into something else when you've had enough of it. By morning, sadness had turned into fuel. I got up, looked in the mirror again, and said to myself, if she wants to call me an ugly old hag, fine. Let's see what this old hag can do. The next few months became the beginning of something I never expected. A total transformation. Not just physical, but emotional, spiritual. I started small. Morning walks that turned into jogs. Cutting down on sugar and caffeine. Drinking more water. Reading self-help books. And then, one day, I walked past a little beauty studio downtown that offered makeovers for women over 50 who want to feel 30 again. I don't know what made me step inside. Maybe curiosity, maybe defiance, but that decision changed everything. The woman who ran the studio, Maya, looked at me like I wasn't invisible. She said, "You have beautiful bone structure. All you need is confidence." For the first time in years, I felt and seen. She gave me a modern haircut, shoulder length, with soft curls, showed me how to do makeup that actually enhanced my features. I looked in the mirror, and for a moment, I didn't recognize myself. But it wasn't vanity, it was rebirth. I joined a local yoga class, started volunteering at the community arts center, and slowly began to find joy in life again. People noticed. Strangers smiled. Friends complimented me. And when I posted a photo of myself at the art gallery, wearing a sleek black dress and confident smile, guess who commented? Chloe. She wrote, "Wow, didn't even recognize you. You look different." Oh, I was different, all right. Because what Chloe didn't know was that my transformation wasn't just skin deep. It was about rediscovering the woman I had forgotten I was. Still, I thought the story would end there, that maybe she'd soften, or at least treat me with a little respect. But I was wrong. A few weeks later, I got a call from Daniel. He sounded nervous. "Mom," he said, "Chloe and I are going through some financial issues. Her boutique isn't doing well, and we're a bit behind on rent. The landlord's threatening to evict us." My heart sank. Despite everything, I couldn't stand the thought of my son struggling. So I did something unexpected. I offered to help, but not in the way they imagined. When I told Daniel I could help with their housing problem, his relief was almost instant. "Mom, really? That would mean the world to us. I'll pay you back, I promise." I told him not to worry about repayment, that I'd take care of it. What neither he nor Chloe knew was that the landlord had already listed their property for sale, desperate to get rid of it. And in that moment, a quiet thought entered my mind. Not born out of spite, not at first, but out of opportunity. I met with the landlord the very next morning. The house was small but lovely, with a big garden and an open porch. The kind of place that had once held laughter, but now, tension. The landlord was a middle-aged man named Mr. Harris. He sighed when I mentioned the tenants. "They're behind on rent again. Nice young man, but his wife, she's got an attitude, always complaining about something." I gave him a sympathetic smile. "How much are you asking?" We shook hands by the afternoon. The papers were drawn up the following week, and just like that, I became the new owner of the house my daughter-in-law lived in. The same house where she'd once called me an ugly old hag. The poetic symmetry of it wasn't lost on me. I didn't rush to reveal anything. I let them live there for a bit longer, while I quietly managed the paperwork behind the scenes. Every month, the rent payments came to me. I didn't even tell Daniel, because I wanted to see what kind of people they really were when they thought no one was watching. 3 months passed. No payments. Not a single dime. I waited, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were going through a rough patch. Maybe Chloe's boutique would turn around. But one afternoon, I drove past the house, and what I saw made my blood boil. A brand new SUV in the driveway, boxes of designer clothes being carried inside, and Chloe outside, laughing with her friends about some spa weekend. So that's where the money was going. I went home, brewed myself a cup of tea, and sat by the window, thinking, not with anger, but with calm precision. If she thought I was weak, outdated, irrelevant, she was about to learn exactly how powerful an old hag could be. The next day, I sent an official letter, polite, professional, signed, "The New Owner." It stated that rent was 3 months overdue, and that if it wasn't paid within 14 days, eviction proceedings would begin. Within hours, Daniel called. "Mom, the landlord's changed. We got an eviction notice." "Oh dear," I said softly. "That must be stressful." "It is," he sighed. "We'll figure something out." Chloe's panicking. I could almost hear her pacing in the background, barking orders, trying to control the situation. 2 weeks later, no rent, no apology, no contact. So I filed the eviction notice. Daniel came to see me the next day, visibly upset. "Mom, you won't believe this. The landlord sold the house, and the new owner, he took a deep breath. They're serious about throwing us out. We have nowhere to go." I looked at him carefully. "You'll figure it out, honey. Maybe move in with me for a bit?" He hesitated. "I don't think Chloe would like that." Of course she wouldn't. The day of the eviction hearing arrived. I walked into the small courthouse wearing a neat cream suit, hair tied back, looking composed but strong. When the clerk called the case, Chloe was already there, glaring at me as if I was somehow to blame for her misery. The moment the clerk announced the new owner's name, her face drained of color. "Mrs. Helen Mitchell." Her jaw dropped. "You?" she whispered, eyes wide. "You're the landlord?" I smiled gently. "Yes, dear, I am." She looked at Daniel, who sat there stunned, unable to speak. I handed over the paperwork, the proof of ownership, the unpaid rent statements, the notices sent. Everything was in order. The judge ruled in my favor within minutes. Outside the courthouse, Chloe's fury boiled over. "You did this on purpose. You humiliated me." I met her glare calmly. "No, Chloe. You did this to yourself. You mocked me, belittled me, and disrespected what you never understood. All I did was take control of what you threw away." She opened her mouth to shout again, but Daniel stepped between us. His eyes were filled with shame. "Mom, I'm sorry. I didn't know things had gone this far." I sighed softly. "You never saw, Daniel. You were too busy trying to make her happy." For a few weeks, they stayed in a small motel while looking for another place. I didn't gloat. I didn't rub it in. But I also didn't help. Instead, I focused on something else, rebuilding myself. I started taking art classes, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I joined a local charity board, began traveling, made new friends. I wasn't just changing how I looked anymore. I was changing how I lived. Every day, I woke up with gratitude instead of resentment. Every mirror became a reflection not of age, but of strength. Months later, I received an invitation. Daniel and Chloe were hosting a family reconciliation dinner. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. When I arrived, I noticed how quiet their new apartment was. Smaller, simpler. Chloe had lost some of her gloss, and her eyes looked tired. She tried to smile, but I could sense the discomfort. Dinner began awkwardly. Then, halfway through, Chloe cleared her throat. "Helen," she began, "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry for how I treated you. I was insecure. You didn't deserve that." The apology surprised me, not because I thought I'd never hear it, but because it sounded sincere. I smiled. "Thank you, Chloe. I accept your apology. Life has a way of teaching us lessons, doesn't it?" She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. For a while, it felt like closure, like the chapter was finally ending. But life wasn't done writing this story yet. A few weeks after that dinner, I got a call from an old friend, a real estate developer. He was organizing a new luxury condo project and wanted me to join as an investor. "You have a great eye for properties," he told me. I laughed, remembering the house I'd bought, the one that started it all. "Sure," I said, "let's do it." And that's when the real transformation began. Not just of looks or confidence, but of destiny. Because sometimes revenge isn't loud. It's quiet, graceful, powerful. And when you live long enough to turn pain into purpose, people stop calling you names. They start calling you unstoppable. As months passed, my life took on a rhythm I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was thriving. The investment project went well, and I soon found myself sitting in rooms I never thought I'd belong to, discussing property values, future developments, and market growth like a seasoned investor. It felt empowering to be respected not as someone's mother or someone's wife, but as Helen, the woman who had built something of her own. But the peace didn't last long. One Saturday morning, I got a call from Daniel. His tone was strained. "Mom, can we come over? We really need to talk." My instinct told me it wasn't good news, but I agreed. When they arrived, Chloe looked pale and uneasy. Her usual smugness was gone, replaced by quiet desperation. I offered them tea and waited. Daniel finally spoke. "We're struggling again, Mom. Chloe's boutique hasn't recovered, and my hours got cut at work. We might lose the apartment." I could feel the familiar pull of motherhood, that instinct to fix everything, to rescue. But I also remembered how enabling their behavior had gotten us here in the first place. "What do you want me to do?" I asked softly. He hesitated, looking at Chloe, who took a deep breath and said, "We were wondering if we could stay with you, just for a few months." I looked between them. "Stay with me?" "Yes," Daniel said quickly. "You have that extra bedroom and we'll help out, I promise. Just until we're stable again." I sat back, silent for a long time. The irony wasn't lost on me. The woman who once called me old junk now wanted to move into my home. Finally, I nodded. "All right, but there will be ground rules." Chloe smiled weakly, relieved. "Of course." The first week was polite enough. They kept to themselves, cleaned up after meals, and Daniel even helped with some gardening. But soon, the old patterns began to resurface. Chloe complained about the furniture, said it looked too outdated. She rearranged my living room without asking, saying it needed a modern touch. One evening, I came home to find her using my grandmother's china, the one thing in the world I cherished most, as serving dishes for takeout noodles. I froze, the sight cutting through me like a knife. "Chloe," I said quietly, "those are antiques. You can't just—" She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, please, Helen, they're just plates. You should stop hoarding old stuff. It's not elegant." I stood there, shaking slightly. Not from anger this time, but from the realization that this woman still hadn't learned respect. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about all the times I'd been told to move on, to forgive, to be the bigger person. But forgiveness doesn't mean letting people trample you twice. The next morning, I made a decision. If they were going to live in my house, they were going to understand what boundaries meant. I sat them both down after breakfast. "I've been thinking," I began. "I don't mind helping you both, but I expect respect in return. This is my home. My things have meaning to me." Chloe crossed her arms. "We're grateful, Helen, but you can't expect us to live in a museum." Daniel Sihil. "Chloe." "No, she needs to hear this," she said sharply. "We're not kids. If we're living here, it has to feel like our space too." I looked at her evenly. "It will never be your space, Chloe. You're guests. Temporary ones." Her face hardened. "You know what? Maybe this was a mistake." I smiled faintly. Maybe it was. For the next week, tension filled every corner of the house. We barely spoke. Meals were eaten in silence. Daniel tried to keep the peace, but it was clear that Chloe was losing control of her composure and her pride. One afternoon, while I was out shopping, I returned to find my closet open. My vintage dresses were scattered on the bed. "Chloe," I called out. She appeared from the hallway, holding one of my old silk scarves. "I was just cleaning. You really keep a lot of outdated stuff, Helen. You should let go of the past." My voice was calm, but cold. "Put my things back exactly where you found them." She smirked. "Relax. I was just trying to help." But I'd had enough. That night, while they were watching TV, I quietly gathered every document related to my properties and financial accounts. I wasn't going to be caught off guard again. The next morning, I called my lawyer. "I need to make a few updates," I told him. We added a clause to my will that Daniel's inheritance would be conditional on mutual respect and responsibility. If he allowed his spouse to mistreat or manipulate me again, everything would go to charity instead. It wasn't revenge. It was protection. 2 weeks later, fate intervened once more. Chloe's boutique partner sued her for breach of contract, something about unpaid supplies and falsified invoices. The stress broke her composure completely. She started snapping at Daniel, blaming him for everything. "Your mother cursed us," she screamed one night. "Ever since that woman came into our lives, nothing has gone right." I stood by the doorway, unseen, listening. Daniel's voice was low and tired. "Chloe, stop blaming my mom for your mistakes. She's done more for us than you ever have." Her response was a cold silence, the kind that freezes the air. That was the night Daniel slept in the guest room. Over the next few days, the tension turned into distance. Chloe spent most of her time locked in their room, barely speaking. Daniel, meanwhile, helped me around the house, cooked meals, even laughed again like he used to. It felt almost peaceful. But peace doesn't last long when pride is still alive. One morning, Chloe stormed into the kitchen, eyes red and wild. "We're leaving," she said flatly. "Pack your things, Daniel." He frowned. "Chloe, where are we going? We don't even have—" "Anywhere but here," she snapped. "I'm done living under your mother's roof." I quietly sipped my coffee. "That's probably best, dear. Some people can't handle stability." She glared at me, her lips trembling with fury. "You'll regret this, Helen. You think you've won, but you haven't." I smiled softly. "Winning isn't about who shouts the loudest, Chloe. It's about who sleeps peacefully at night." They left that afternoon. Daniel hugged me before he went. "Mom, I'm sorry again. I'll make this right, I promise." I kissed his cheek. "Just focus on yourself, sweetheart. The rest will follow." Weeks turned into months. The house was quiet again, but this time, it was a good quiet. the kind that lets your heart breathe. Then, one morning, I received an unexpected call. It was from Chloe. "Can we meet?" she asked, her voice soft, almost broken. I hesitated, but agreed. We met at a small cafe downtown. She looked different, tired, pale, her usual fire dimmed. "Daniel left," she said, tears forming. "He said he needs space. I don't blame him. I ruined everything." I listened quietly. "I just wanted to say, you were right about me," she whispered. "I thought strength meant control, but it doesn't. It's grace, and you had that all along." For a long moment, I said nothing. Then, softly, I replied, "It's never too late to learn grace, Chloe, but it's something you have to earn." She nodded, tears falling freely now. "I'm sorry." I reached across the table, placing a gentle hand on hers. Apology accepted. And just like that, the storm finally passed. After that meeting, I didn't expect to hear from Chloe again. People like her often drift out of your life quietly once the truth settles in. But for the first time, her apology felt sincere, not like a performance, not like manipulation, but a moment of clarity from someone who had finally faced herself. Still, I knew better than to build expectations. Some wounds, once healed, shouldn't be reopened. As for Daniel, he visited occasionally. He was renting a small apartment downtown, working extra shifts, and, for the first time in his adult life, standing on his own 2 feet. Each time we talked, he seemed calmer, wiser, as if he'd finally learned the lessons I'd been trying to teach for years. One evening, over dinner, he said something that melted me. "Mom," he said quietly, "I finally get it. You weren't trying to control me. You were trying to protect me from learning things the hard way." I smiled, my chest tightening. "Sometimes, son, the hard way is the only way people truly learn." He nodded. "I just wish I'd listened sooner." We sat in silence for a while, the kind that feels warm and full. The years of distance, pride, and misunderstandings slowly faded into something resembling peace. That night, as I cleaned up the dishes, I felt a quiet sense of completion. For so long, I'd lived in the shadow of other people's expectations, as a wife, a mother, a mother-in-law. But now, I was something else entirely. A woman who had reclaimed her own story. A few weeks later, something unexpected happened. My friend Margaret invited me to a local community fair. It was a small event, mostly local artisans, bakers, and craftspeople showing their work. I hesitated at first, but she insisted. "You've been cooped up long enough, Helen. Come out and show the world that glow-up of yours." I laughed, but agreed. At the fair, I wandered between stalls, candles, handmade pottery, jewelry, home decor, until something caught my eye. A small stand with hand-painted scarves. Each one was unique, soft silk brushed with delicate patterns of gold and rose. Behind the stand was a woman, slim, pale, with tired eyes that I instantly recognized. Chloe. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air hung heavy with surprise and unspoken history. She managed a small smile. "Helen? Hi." I looked around at her setup. Modest, humble, but beautiful. "You made these?" She nodded. "Every one of them. It's my new thing. I couldn't save the boutique, but I started painting. Turns out, it's peaceful." I picked up one scarf, a deep emerald green with soft gold swirls. "It's lovely. Thank you," she said quietly. "I still have a long way to go, but it feels good to make something instead of taking." I smiled faintly. "That's a good lesson to learn." She looked at me hesitant. "Would you like one? On the house?" I shook my head gently. "No, dear. I'll pay for it. Full price." Her eyes filled with tears. "You don't have to. I know," I said softly, "but I want to." I paid for the scarf, folded it carefully, and as I turned to leave, she said, "Helen, thank you for everything, even the hard lessons." I looked back. "Life teaches us through pain sometimes, Chloe, but you learned, and that's what matters. Walking away from that stall, I felt something shift inside me. The resentment that had quietly lived in me for years finally let go. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting the pain. It meant reclaiming my peace from it. That night, I draped the scarf over my shoulders as I sat by the window. The house was quiet again, the good kind of quiet. And I realized that sometimes the universe gives you closure not through revenge, but through growth. The following spring, Daniel surprised me with a visit. He looked healthier, happier. "I have news," he said, grinning. "I got promoted, and I'm buying a small house, just mine this time. No co-signers, no drama." Pride swelled in me. "That's wonderful, Daniel. You deserve it." He nodded. "I also wanted to say thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled. "That's what mothers do, son. We hold the door open, but we also know when to close it." He chuckled softly, then handed me a small box. "This is for you." Inside was a delicate bracelet, silver with tiny initials engraved, HD, for the woman who built me twice. Tears welled in my eyes. "Daniel, it's beautiful." He hugged me tightly. "You built me once as a child and again as a man. I'll never forget that." That night, I sat by the fireplace, wearing the bracelet and the scarf Chloe had made. It struck me how life has a strange way of bringing everything full circle. Pain into wisdom, pride into humility, distance into understanding. And as the flames danced in the hearth, I realized I hadn't just survived betrayal, humiliation, or loss. I had transformed them. The next morning, while making breakfast, I received a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately, Chloe's. Inside was a short note. "Dear Helen, I've been accepted to exhibit my scarves at a local gallery. It wouldn't have happened if you hadn't taught me the difference between value and vanity. Thank you for giving me the lesson I didn't know I needed. Chloe." I smiled. A real, genuine smile. I placed the letter on the fridge and whispered to myself, maybe we all just needed a second chance. And with that, I finally felt free. Months passed peacefully after that letter. The house that once echoed with conflict and tension now felt calm, sacred even. Every morning, I'd open the windows, let the sunlight spill in, and think, this peace was earned. I'd started tending a small garden behind the house. Roses, lilies, and marigolds. The same yard where I once felt small now bloomed with color. A living reminder that healing isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, like flowers opening after a long winter. Sometimes, neighbors would stop by just to say hello. They used to whisper about me once, that poor woman who got kicked out by her son. Now they spoke differently. She's stronger than most people we know. It wasn't about pride anymore. It was about peace. One afternoon, as I was pruning the roses, a car pulled up. Daniel stepped out, and behind him, Chloe. For a moment, my heart fluttered with old anxiety. But then I saw the way she looked at me, not with entitlement, not with guilt, but with respect. "Hi, Helen," she said softly. "Hello, dear," I replied. "You're looking well." She smiled faintly. "Thank you. We came to ask something together." Daniel took her hand, nervous but sincere. "Mom, we've been talking. We're not getting back together," he added quickly, "but we want to make peace, real peace, for everyone's sake." I nodded slowly. Peace sounds lovely. Chloe handed me a wrapped package. Inside was a framed photo, an old one, from a family barbecue years ago, before the fights, before the pride. We were all laughing. "I found it while cleaning," she said. "I thought maybe you'd want it." I traced the edge of the frame with my fingers. My throat tightened. "Thank you," I whispered. "It means more than you know." We stood there for a moment. Three people once torn apart by misunderstanding and ego, now connected by something softer, wiser. Daniel looked around. "The garden's beautiful, Mom." "It's my therapy," I said, smiling. "I talk to the plants. They listen better than people." He laughed. "You're something else." After they left, I sat on the porch with a cup of tea and watched the sun sink low behind the trees. Life had come full circle. The same walls that once heard shouting now echoed only with wind and birdsong. Sometimes, I'd think back to the day they asked me to sleep on the floor, the humiliation, the betrayal. I'd remember how my heart broke, how I thought I'd never recover. But that version of me didn't realize something powerful. Every ending carries within it the seed of a beginning. Buying the house hadn't just been an act of defiance. It had been my declaration that I was worth more than the way they treated me. And now, years later, I understood something deeper. I didn't buy it to get even. I bought it to get free. Freedom. From guilt. From pain. From the need to prove my worth to anyone. That night, as I turned off the lights and headed to bed, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. My hair was grayer, my face softer, but my eyes, they held a light I hadn't seen in years. The light of a woman who had faced the storm and chosen to bloom anyway. A year later, Daniel called with exciting news. "Mom, the company's sending me abroad, London, for a year. I'll finally get to see the world." I laughed. "You'll love it. Just remember to eat properly and wear a jacket. You always underestimate the cold." He chuckled. "Yes, ma'am." Then, hesitantly, he added, "I wouldn't have made it here without you, Mom." My eyes welled up. "That's all I ever wanted, son, for you to find your own strength." After hanging up, I walked through the quiet house, the one that had once been filled with arguments, now echoing with peace. I touched the walls, the furniture, the photo Chloe had returned. Everything had changed, and yet, somehow, I felt like I was home for the first time. I went out to the garden and watched the wind move through the roses. They had survived storms too, and every petal that bloomed was proof that beauty can grow even from pain. Sometimes people ask me if I regret buying the house. I always smile and say, "No, I didn't buy a house. I bought my freedom." Because in the end, it was never about revenge. It was about reclaiming my dignity and teaching others that kindness is strength, not weakness. So when people walk by and see me tending to my garden, they only see an older woman surrounded by flowers. But if they look closely, they'll see something else. A survivor who learned that peace doesn't come from payback. It comes from letting go. And every time I breathe in the scent of the roses, I whisper to myself, "You did it, Helen. You came home."